And it is the Saturday Coffee Klatch, not only with Heather Lofthouse, but also with our dear friend Michael Lahanas Calderon.
Hello.
Uh, Hello, Michael. It's good to have you here.
Good to
Hi,
be here.
team.
And so, Heather, what do we have today?
Today we have to talk about the brutal murder of Brian Thompson, who was the United Healthcare CEO. We're going to talk about how much money is represented by the appointees and surroundees of Donald Trump. We'll talk about what should the Dems be doing for us, for the public good, before they're out in a matter of minutes, and a couple other fun things maybe at the end.
Well, that sounds good. I'll tell you, the thing that really astounded me about not only the fact that in Midtown Manhattan, in the middle of a day, somebody is gunned down, but also the ridicule that was heaped on this man, the head of United Healthcare. Uh, I mean, did it strike either of you as kind of shocking? I mean, it's shocking, obviously, that somebody's gunned down,
Mhm.
but on social media, the amount of anger against United Health, against big insurers, against this particular CEO, just amazed me.
It's very, very little sympathy, I would say. And it is shocking to see on the surface. And also, I think, pretty representative of the anger that we see among many people against systems and institutions. Wouldn't you both say?
That's it. I think there was this kind of, this is the internet though. So there's gleeful, morbid, I don't know, sarcasm. And I think also because it seems like it was a political hit, everyone just said, watch me, here comes my anger. And they lost sight of, but this is also the internet, decorum, or, there wasn't phrasing where it was like, this is so tragic, but this is now also a time for us to reconsider our healthcare system. It was way more biting. And I think it shows the anger that we have.
I mean, people were saying thoughts and deductibles to the family. And unfortunately, my condolences are out of network. I mean, on one level, you can see this is sort of humorous, but there is so much anger out there. This is one step removed from the kind of anger that propelled Donald Trump into the White House. People are, you take these big systems out there, healthcare, and banking and Ticketmaster and what else? I mean, airlines. I mean, everybody is so pissed off.
I think people feel
corporations.
exploited in particular. I mean, nickel and dimed, whatever phrase you want to use, and denied care, among other things. That's clear from some of the comments that you were reading. I wouldn't say that I'm surprised, just given how the internet has evolved in the last few years, that this is the almost instantaneous reaction.
Right. And airlines is one thing and Ticketmaster is one thing, but so many people have friends and family who have died because of a lack of coverage or have been decimated in terms of their financial well-being because of the state of healthcare in America. But so what are the big take-homes from this? Medicare for all?
Well, I would say you can't use somebody's death to
This
really
is your point.
to do anything with. But I think that undoubtedly the anger is real, and I think Democrats need to be very sensitive to this. It's not just Obamacare. Obamacare is good, but it's not responding to everything that people need. The healthcare system is still broken. People are angry and resentful, and there is a great deal of pushback.
I know.
I mean, everybody. I mean, I'm thinking back over the last year, the number of times I've had to deal with health insurers and billing mistakes. And in fact, recently I got a bill. I paid the bill, and then they sent my check back to me saying that it was their mistake. And then the bank said to me, "No, you still have to. The check bounced, so you have to pay something." I mean, it was like being caught in a Kafkaesque nightmare.
Right. And we're the lucky ones who get to deal with that
We
and
are
have the coverage.
We are the privileged.
I know. And of course, the reason that we think it was a political hit is because of those words written on the casings, right? Which was
deny, defend, depose, which
Right.
is a reference
The
to
casing of the
of
Bullets.
the bullets.
of the bullet.
Mhm.
Yeah.
At least that's what's being reported this week. Well, I mean, I think maybe that's a way to transition into. I mean, we're talking about healthcare in general. We've seen a slew of new cabinet appointments over the last few weeks.
Oh,
Is there
we're going to have the
anybody?
most amazing public health care system
Oh,
you can
stop.
imagine, with Robert F. Kennedy in charge,
And Dr.
Robert F.
Oz.
Kennedy Jr., and Dr. Oz, and
Mm.
all of the rest of them. I mean, they are all anti-vaxxers. They are all conspiracy
I
theorists.
know.
And they're all ready to privatize every corner of the government they possibly can.
And the sense of the reality of how nutrition works across America. I mean, there's just such a gap of the things that people want people to do, drink raw milk all the time.
But this
And
is
the
this
realities.
is related to the first point in
Yeah.
terms of people's sense of the system is out of whack. They are willing to go along. Not everybody, but some people are willing to go along with conspiracy theorists
Yeah.
who say that the big drug companies are behind everybody getting vaccinated, and it really spreads all sorts of diseases. And but what happens? There's a bird flu, potentially a bird flu epidemic.
hmm
What happens if that hits on January 21st?
I mean, I think we've seen a version of what happens to it with Trump in office when there's a pandemic, and it's not great.
But then Trump was not surrounded by
I know. He had that-
anti-vaxxers.
Yeah, I know. Dr. Fauci, who might be pardoned, which is crazy to me. But so I guess if we could say to Biden or Trump right now, use this United Healthcare atrocity for good. What are people actually wanting? Like, what are some policy changes? We don't have to do them today. I mean, but what's the message we wish they would hear and tell us they were hearing?
Well, I would not use this atrocity for good. I mean, I really think we should not be using it. The only reason I brought it up and you brought it up is because the internet exploded
Well, right.
with it.
And
But I think it does point out this anger.
Bingo.
And the question I guess you're asking is, what should Biden and the Democrats do between now and January 20th? I mean, there's still time. A lot of people are, when they talk to me about the administration, they're forgetting that Biden is still president.
I know.
And Kamala Harris is still vice president. I mean, this is still, and the Democrats are still in charge of the Senate.
Right.
I mean, believe it or not, the Democrats still have time to do some
Right,
things.
and they're not on their holiday break. They're in their offices. So what should they be doing?
Well, let me read to you. This is a list partly coming from the Revolving Door Project about what should happen right now.
Yes.
And stop me if I say something that is astounding. But for example, Biden should, and the Democrats should, reconfirm Lauren McFerrin and give the National Labor Relations Board a pro-worker majority until 2026. Is that?
Yes.
Do I have
here?
your?
Here.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. NLRB. Check.
Okay, good. At the Securities and Exchange Commission, confirm Caroline Crenshaw for a 5-year term.
Good.
Yes?
Yes, we need her in.
This is easy. Okay. CFTC, confirm Julie Siegel for a 5-year term.
Yes. We
Michael?
know these people.
Michael, you.
I think all of these so far are good things that the Democrats should be doing in the short amount of time that they have left.
Okay, Federal Trade Commission. Now, I know something about the Federal Trade Commission. I used to be there. Renominate Lena Khan, whose term has expired, for another term as an FTC commissioner.
Good. Quick.
But you have to do it quick.
Yep.
All of these things have got to be done
Right.
fast.
Right.
And FCC, at the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, renominate Jessica Rosenworcel. Did you know about Jessica Rosenworcel?
I didn't, but my
Net
Did
neutrality advocate, if
Yeah.
I remember
She's a
correctly.
net neutrality advocate. She's supportive of net neutrality, whose term expires in July 2025. She can be renominated and confirmed for another term. Okay, all these, are you with me?
green light.
Green light.
Okay, this is very, very easy.
I love this committee.
Thank you. Thank you. How about having Biden repeal, and the Democrats repeal, the Comstock Act, which could be weaponized by Trump to prosecute over the shipment of birth control abortion drugs? It would require some GOP support in the House. But you with me on this?
I think
Definitely.
it's
Shall
worth. Before you continue, I think even for the things that seem less likely on our list, as a person in the world, I would feel better if the Democrats at least tried.
Tried.
Yeah.
Now, Michael, you are not just a person in the world.
I mean,
You
he is
are
also
the
a
person
in the world.
who is de facto, for want of anybody else, representative of the Gen
Gen
Z.
Z.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're the future. I'm the past.
Well, the future's here,
I'm the past.
Oh, I'm
and
the present.
You're the present. That's
This is
right.
like Scrooge.
So this is important. These are important things to you
Yeah.
about the Democrats and what the Democrats stand for.
And I think particularly when you look at how the election went and how many young people were turned off by what the Democratic Party was offering, if they don't put forth some effort, not to say that they aren't to some degree already, but really push hard to protect people in this next month, I mean, it's just disheartening to see otherwise.
It is disheartening.
Yep.
That's a good word for it.
Mm.
The Biden pardon me, the
Mhm.
pardon of Hunter Biden raises the question of what Biden could do in terms of other pardons. He could grant clemency to anyone still in federal prison for non-violent drug offenses or marijuana-related crimes. There are at least 3,000 people who are
Yep.
in prison for this.
Yeah.
Yes? Do
Mhm.
I have your... I'll tell him that both of you agreed to this, 2 generations behind me. He could similarly commute the sentences of anyone on federal military death row to prevent Trump from restarting a federal execution spree.
I think the presidential pardon power, as it stands, is quite powerful. And I think that, I mean, we have this long list in front of us. It would
Yes,
certainly...
it's only going to take me another hour
Yeah, a couple
to
hours.
go through this.
No, but I mean, I think it's just everything you're reading off and that we can continue to read off is just emblematic of, again, things that the power of the presidency can be used to do to help people, right? People
Right.
in the real world, people outside of the DC orbit,
People as consumers, people
Mhm.
as people that are part of the criminal justice system,
Mhm.
people that are just people.
I mean, a lot of these are ideas having to do with clemency and pardons, and I won't. Pardon me, I'm not going to use all of the time. But it does raise the question. I don't want to, so much has been talked about with regard to Biden and Hunter Biden, but it made me kind of sad. I mean, here he is. I mean, I'm a father of 2 men who are now men. I understand what Biden must have been going through.
Mhm.
But he's got so much criticism about this.
I know.
Is this justified, the criticism?
Well, I would refer audience members who haven't read your Substack to maybe read your Substack on this from this past week, where I think exactly what you just said is true. And also, I think that it's time perhaps to look at reforming the pardon system, right? Particularly if we're looking at the incoming administration and the kind of characters that were already pardoned in the first Trump administration. And if I remember correctly, there's a representative who, Steve Cohen of Tennessee,
Steve
who
Cohen of
introduced a bill on
Tennessee.
this.
Yes. I even, in my Substack, I mentioned him, and he was so pleased that somebody actually
Oh yeah, there was a
singled him
press
out.
release from his office that said, yes,
I love it.
Robert Reich has acknowledged.
But you do have to reform. We do have to reform the pardon. It's not going to happen
Yeah.
in the next 4 years. I doubt it.
So there's Biden having a son, right? And that makes it very personal. So a lot of what the Dems have said is, hey, Dems, you need to play hardball. The Republicans play hardball. You need to break rules when we need to break rules. So why don't you do that? And so this, to some people, is an example of that. To other people, this is an example of breaking a rule for a more personal reason, right? Rather than for the greater good. Can you talk about that a little bit? Institutions, we need institutions that function, but we can push them on issues for large people. But there's a difference between personal gain, even if it's your child.
Heather, I hear this all the time from very angry Democrats who say the Democratic Party, and this goes back to your point, Michael, the Democratic Party really does need to play hardball and be as aggressive as the Republicans and break things if necessary.
Right.
But here's the irony. The Democratic Party stands for democracy, stands for our institutions of self-government, not the status quo. The status quo is corruption. The status quo is big corporations and wealthy people and Wall Street basically overwhelming our institutions with big money. Get the big money out. Make the institutions work. Don't just take a wrecking ball to these institutions.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, maybe that's a good segue to talk about the incoming administration.
Ooh,
Talk
speaking
about
of money,
big money
cha-ching,
taking a wrecking
cha-ching.
ball to the United States government. Heather, I think you have a list of...
I have a list. In terms of Trump's cabinet, right? And so there's a cartoonish amount of corruption in here. So we don't even have to talk about that. But let's just talk about the numbers, the net worth of all these individuals. Now, keep in mind, Elon is not in the cabinet. So his 300 plus billion, we can give or take in our equations, right? So we are looking at Musk alone is worth 337 billion.
But you're saying take him out of the equation.
Yeah, so take
just
him out.
look at the non-Musk.
The non-Musk billionaires, and we're still over $10 billion for the appointees that Donald Trump, the populist, for the people, cleaning out the swamp, whatever his phrases of the nanosecond are. That's how much money we're talking of the people he's appointed and the kind of people that he's appointed.
Every single billionaire who contributed over $10 million to his campaign is now picked by him for whatever they want to do. Some of them are say they don't want to give up their money, they don't want to put it in a trust, they don't even want to be exposed. So he's making them advisors who don't even have officially cabinet position roles. I mean, this is unheard of.
Also, well, on the one hand, it's unheard of. On the other hand, to me, this is like icky, corrupted politics as usual from hundreds of years ago. So he tries to come in here and say, I'm blowing everything up. And then you're doing quid pro quo with your rich buddies. Like, that's novel?
Well, it's exactly 100 years ago, 110 years ago. This is the first Gilded Age.
Right.
This is the administration, this is...
It's the Gilded Cabinet.
The Gilded
The
Cabinet.
cabinet, Michael.
And we're now in the second Gilded Age, and we have Donald Trump, who is bringing the billionaires and the multimillionaires into his cabinet and also giving them these positions of influence, even though they are not officially confirmed.
It's so much money. And then so many of them also are currently or have been affiliated with Fox News.
10 of them so far were hosts or formal contributors to Fox News. Fox News trains people, of course, to be government officials.
But remember when Fox News was out and he was mad at Fox News, but now he's the Patriot of the Year?
Well, I guess they trimmed out all of the Trump critics, or he's just plucking the ones that have been the most loyal or subservient, as you like to say.
Subservient.
I think that there is a difference between loyalty and subservience. And we've talked about this a little bit before. Every president wants loyal people. Every president wants his staff and his picks and his cabinet picks to be loyal to him, but also to be loyal to the United States. Donald Trump doesn't care about loyalty to the United States. He wants subservience. He wants people who are loyal to him and not loyal to the United States. He wants people who are loyal to him, even if he tells them to, do something that is utterly immoral. It doesn't matter. He will demand of them certain things. There are no lines anymore.
And in many cases, these are people who aren't just subservient to him, but actively hostile to the agencies that they're being put in charge of. Whether it be people like Kash Patel at the FBI, who's, probably got his deep state enemies list ready to go for January 21, or, on a smaller but still important scale, the IRS Commissioner, Billy Long, is someone who has co-sponsored legislation to abolish the IRS. I mean, hello, as you like to say. And you could just go, the SEC chair, that's another great example. Gary Gensler, who's currently the SEC chair, is a strong advocate of, regulating crypto and all of these other new emerging, financial sectors. And he's set to be replaced by one of the most crypto-friendly people, that he could have chosen from, Paul Atkins. And it just goes on and on and on and on.
These people not only have no respect for the agencies they are being nominated to run, they don't know anything about the agencies.
That's what I was about to say.
They're nominated.
It's so
nominated
scary.
to run. I mean, they are just flacks. They are hacks.
And these agencies are so critical. The Defense Department, you need to understand defense.
I think Pete Hegseth, by the way, I'm not sure he's going to get through. I mean, Gates really didn't. He was a stalking horse, maybe. But I think the Republicans in the Senate are
know.
are now in turmoil. I mean,
But his
how
mommy came on the news. His mommy came on the
it
news.
said if she forgives
But
him.
she had to come in. I mean, it's you want the Department of Defense's mom to just have to swoop in and really clear
Did
things
you
up.
did either of you read Jane Meyer's piece in the New Yorker
No,
about
but it's
HeckSafe?
on my book list.
It's
I mean,
really you
bookmark.
have to read it,
Okay.
because it's not only about his carousing and his sexual harassment and rape, alleged rape, but it's also about his failures to even two agencies, private agencies, veterans agencies that he was in charge
Small,
of,
by the way,
and he
relatively speaking.
is small, and he and money can't be accounted for, and he obviously, I'm not going to accuse him of being an alcoholic, but he has a problem with alcoholism. This man is unfit to run anything, let alone the largest department in the United States government.
Maybe Elon Musk's mom should also talk to Pete Hegseth's
She's
mom.
been on Fox to talk about him before several
there's so
times.
many mommies showing up.
A lot of moms. This is actually a mom cabinet. This
It's
is the power,
fascinating.
the power
I mean,
of this
good-
cabinet.
It's we could talk about that for days. Okay, so here's a question for you. For the DNC, what are we got to be thinking longer term.
We're talking about Democratic National Committee.
Exactly.
It's going to choose a new chair on February 1st.
Soon, and this is going to mark what we're looking at. I mean, Dems, are you out there? What is that? There is no Democratic Party. There kind of is a Democratic Party. How do we form things, you two? Now's the time. We've got to be thinking about this.
You had an answer on this also in your Substack, if I remember
You're
correctly.
so good at reading the Substack.
Thank you,
know.
Michael. You're the one.
You're that
I
guy.
get it in my
I
inbox
knew
every
somebody
You're
day.
the
was
one who
reading it.
hearted it, and you're the liker.
Exactly.
I think that there is a very good candidate, and he has been chairman of the Wisconsin Democratic Party. His name is Ben Wickler. And he's done extraordinary things in Wisconsin. He's made Wisconsin and the Wisconsin Democratic Party really a force. When he took over in 2019, it was almost dead on its. I mean, Ben Wickler, if there's one Democrat out there who has done an extraordinary amount to reorganize and energize and organize, it is Ben Wickler. So I think he would be a terrific chair.
And there are a few other people who are in the mix, but the one that a lot of people are talking about, and he's going on some news shows, is Rahm Emanuel.
Ew.
All that reaction.
I worked with him in the Clinton administration.
Yes.
I mean, he is the corporate Democratic National Committee.
He is the corporate wing.
He represents
That entire
big
wing.
money, and
Yeah.
he represents the old Democratic Party.
Right.
Now, some people think, well, he's aggressive, and
I
that's
know.
what the Democrats need is aggression.
And he'll fundraise
And he'll fundraise, but it's just back to what we had before.
I
It's
know. And we need to learn, and I feel like we do this for our day job, right? You're looking what resonates with people.
But this is, Michael, the question you asked a little while ago. What can the Democratic Party do to appeal to your generation? Because this is the question that everybody should be asking.
Yeah.
I mean, your generation did not come out in the election. I mean, you
I
especially
voted,
are
just for the
responsible.
record,
Yeah.
audience members.
my generation barely came out. I mean, not enough people came out.
Well,
Full
I think
stop.
more broadly, there was a lack of faith in the Democratic Party across many demographics. And if you look at urban strongholds in particular, the vote drops in those cities is remarkable. And that's the Democratic base, right? The Democratic base was not happy. And whether that was foreign policy, whether that was embracing Liz Cheney, embracing Mark Cuban, embracing Wall Street, I mean, the list goes on. And I would imagine Rahm Emanuel would not, shall we say, change tune on some of those
Well,
things.
let's
Okay,
look
so
back. Yeah.
So Michael, this is a question for you, and you are not representing your generation. Don't feel like you're stuck in a corner
pressure.
on this.
Feels
no
like
pressure.
you're
But
representing.
what should the Democratic Party do, in your opinion, to make young people feel excited again, or excited for the first time?
I mean, listen, I think that's the big thing. I think that there were a lot of young people shouting very loudly for months, if not years, about a variety of issues, whether on the economic front, about rising costs, the price of housing, student debt. I mean, some of that, there were attempts to address it. And I think that there was a lack of communication and a lot of misinformation out there about the efforts that were tried. But honestly, I mean, the last 4 years, it was really difficult to see what the Democratic Party stood for clearly. And I think it was because a lot of this inner conflict between the corporate wing that was sort of gently holding back everybody else, or aggressively at times, from saying anything too critical of the people who hold the purse strings, right?
I think that's exactly right. It's also a desire not to rock the boat, not to get people so upset that they are going to demand new programs and higher taxes that the wealthy will pay to support everybody else. And that's what the wealthy, big money people who are supporting Democrats and Republicans really are most afraid of. It's taxes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a chicken and egg problem, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that I've learned over the years
Tell us.
is that there's no Democratic Party.
I know.
I mean, this is something that people have a hard time understanding. There used to be a bottom-up Democratic Party. There was local, big, powerful local Democratic clubs. There were state Democratic conventions and state Democratic organizations, and then, ultimately they would come together for the Democratic National Committee or the Democratic National Conventions. But you don't have that anymore. All you have on the Democratic side, it's starting to change on the Republican side for terrible reasons.
Yep.
All you have on the Democratic side are big fundraisers. Fundraisers. That's it.
I know. And I think that the message that having Rahm Emanuel versus Ben Wickler would send is not great. I mean, he is associated in the Clinton administration, which he helped whipped up support for NAFTA. Then
we're talking about
Rahm Emanuel,
Rahm,
forgive me. And then when he was Obama's chief of staff, he did small stimulus around the 2009 dip in our economy. And then he did big mergers. One was around Live Nation. Ticketmaster and Live Nation. We've talked about that.
Young people famously love Live Nation and Ticketmaster.
Right, exactly. And then he urged Obama to go small on healthcare. I mean, that is not something that people want to hear about today or that people need today. And then as mayor of Chicago, he cut education budgets and mental health budgets. And so there are issues with him in addition to being this kind of the head of the corporate wing. Yeah.
Could I zero in? The small big thing I think is important, because I think when people think about Democrats, they think, well, they'll tinker around the edges. And we saw a lot of that kind of messaging in the campaign this year. There was no really loud appeal to universalism in any of the programs that I heard anyway. I mean, they were afraid to even name a number for the minimum wage increase. Or if they did, I didn't hear about it.
But see, the irony here is that Donald Trump came through this campaign and was elected, and people who are supporting him, and this is a majority of the voter population of the United States who voted, they think he stood for big stuff, not for small stuff. That he's a big leader, not a small at the margin leader.
And he had zero specifics except tariffs.
No, he had specifics in terms of going after immigrants.
Well, I know,
and he had specific in terms of replacing the civil service. He had specifics in terms of going after his enemies.
I know. It's a different level.
Yeah, Trump the individual used the simplest, biggest messages, and behind him is the very specific evil policy wonks of Project 2025, going straight down the list of every agency they want to cut and every government employee they want to harass.
But the point is that Trump campaigned as a strong man. And the unstated premise, and sometimes stated premise, was I will do it.
Right.
I am tough. Yep. I'm a thug.
Right.
I will break through everything else, and I will do it, and I'll do it on your behalf.
Yep.
That's what his message was.
Yep.
It was very simple.
Also, I feel like if you do polling from people after this whole thing and you say, people have probably done this, but what did Trump stand for? What did Kamala stand for? I mean, this is overly reductionist, but in 3 words, it would be interesting to see if there was more variation, I would think, on the Kamala side. I mean, to your point about we want to feel it exactly. We want to feel that you are pushing things, that you have our backs. And it felt like it almost was piecemeal without a unifying thread somehow.
Well, and in fairness, she only had 3 months.
I know, and she was fabulous.
And
I'm just
thought
thinking
she was on
where
the
we
debate
are.
stage. She was the best that I've ever seen. But I think you're pointing out something that is really important, Heather, and that is that Kamala Harris never said the word inequality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she never talked about corruption.
Mm-hmm.
She never talked about the influence of big money in politics. She never talked about the themes that really are underlying the dysfunction of our entire system. The themes that get people to, not celebrate the death of a CEO of a healthcare, but at least, not ridicule a
Right.
healthcare system and United Health and and bring out the anger that people have.
Right.
Trump responded to that anger. She did not.
Well, I have a question to pose to the both of you then, because
Great.
I think this is a question I hear a lot among my peers. Regardless of whether or not Ben Wickler gets 448, DNC delegates who are nameless individuals, party elites that, to the best of my knowledge, I don't really know.
By the way, that 448, just so we are
448,
clear,
thank you.
that's the number of people who are voting
On the
February
committee.
1st.
Yep.
I mean, that's a fairly tiny number
Yeah.
of people.
And
Okay, I'm sorry.
Forgive
I
my
interrupted you.
cynicism in bringing up that number. I think it was, as someone who's not involved deeply in Democratic Party leadership race knowledge, it was kind of surprising to me. I mean, all of this talk you were just saying a minute ago about how there are no, mass membership clubs and no direct involvement with the members. I think that, getting back to my point, this is why so many people feel disconnected, right? Even for us to say Ben Wickler would be a phenomenal candidate to run the DNC, and he would be, I don't know what the mechanism is directly for me to influence that.
Mm-hmm.
And contrast this with the MAGA, the hats and the buttons and the membership. I mean,
Yep.
this is a membership organization.
Yep.
People love to talk about it as I'm a MAGA. What
Yeah.
do they say with Democrats?
Well, and so
Nobody
that-
says I'm a Democrat.
No,
And
they
that-
say I'm a Democrat.
They say,
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly. But that brings me to the question then. Is the Democratic Party still the way forward? I'm not saying I have a strong opinion on that necessarily at this point, but I think that it's a question I hear a lot of my friends ask me. They feel let down or they feel disappointed or they're not sure that the Democrats are going to stand up to Trump in this next administration, even in the way that they did in the first one.
suppose AOC tomorrow was going to say, okay, I'm going to start a new party of young people who are progressives, a young progressive party. And here she lists, access to housing and access to college, cheaper access to college. She goes-
Healthcare.
and healthcare. She
Student
goes
debt
through
out.
student debt. So what then? Would your friends be excited?
I think they would be excited to hear somebody who is expressing interest in what they're interested in and what they want, right? And I think that having members on the periphery of the Democratic leadership historically saying those sorts of things has never felt fully satisfying. And it feels like there's always half measures or attempts to introduce it and say, well, we can't go too far. Let's not get crazy. We're not going to advocate for it.
Listen, Bernie Sanders in 2016, now you were not yet born, but in 2016, Bernie Sanders did run for president, and he had a very elaborate and cogent and coherent and powerful platform, and the Democratic National Committee cut him off at the knees.
Yep.
Mm.
And
So
what
where does that
about the
leave us?
people who say the stakes are so high, that's too radical, we have to be careful. Let's just make smaller steps. Let's do a little of those things that you mentioned, Michael, because they are important. But let's stay where we are. Let's not ruffle too many feathers.
Well, the problem is you sound like by not ruffling feathers and by being so careful,
Yeah.
you are protecting the status quo. You are the
Bingo.
establishment.
I know.
And the most powerful movement in American politics today is anti-establishment anger at a system that seems rigged against average working people. I mean, that's it.
I know. So people got to get to their Saturdays, as do we. But can we just talk for 1 minute about what happened in South Korea this week? Because I thought it was so interesting. And Michael, you love a foreign policy story.
That's true. I'm part of the 2% of voters who care about foreign
No,
policy
but
generally.
it bears on what we're talking about right now.
Oh, it does. It does. Well, I mean, the question that I was posing in our pre-show talk was just, this is an ongoing situation, right? But what happened earlier this week was the president of South Korea declared martial law, had all of these long litany of excuses about opposition forces doing this and that. And the opposition party, which holds the majority in the National Assembly, said, no, we are not going to let you do that, exercised their constitutional right to overturn martial law, and the president backed down. And where we were left was a situation where you had National Assembly members in South Korea who had seen previous authoritarian governments, to be clear. So they're experienced and understand what happens, barricading the doors to the National Assembly to prevent, police and soldiers from entering, and going loudly on social media and saying, it is not that you can't do this. We will not let you do this.
Well, this is,
Yeah.
okay, this raises the question. If the same thing happened in the United States under Donald Trump, just like the South Korea head of the president of South Korea, Donald Trump says, everything's out of hand. I'm declaring martial law.
Mm-hmm.
Would Republicans, remember we're going to have a Republican House and Republican Senate, would they do, in your view, what the South Korean Parliament did?
I think the fact that we have to ask that question is terrifying, and I don't honestly know. I hope that they do. I hope.
Ditto.
But I think it means that there is still something to popular and mass resistance, peaceful, obviously. That was exactly what happened in South Korea. I mean, you had the legislative staffers of the National Assembly members going in there immediately to protect democracy and to ensure there was a quorum and all these things. I mean, it's on the surface, all of these are, quite frankly, very boring words to say to people out on the streets. Like, yes, there was a quorum and they ensured they did. But like seeing it, and if you go on social media and you look at these videos, they were ready. They knew what could happen.
It was so fast too, wasn't it?
The whole thing was 5 hours.
Yeah.
Right? 5 hours of martial law. But you pointed out just a moment ago that this is a country that has experienced the equivalent of dictatorship. So it's a fresh reality. Democracy is something that they are excited about, they want to preserve. We take it for granted. I mean, it wasn't even an animating issue in the last election. Most people were talking about, well, Kamala Harris didn't talk enough about bread and butter issues. She didn't appeal to me in terms of my needs for housing and blah, 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 blah. Democracy. I
mean, I think one really poignant example that I was reading about is that there was a newspaper in one of the larger cities in South Korea that immediately was ready to print out a copy of their newspaper that was like an emergency alert version to throw out into the streets, and they barricaded their newsroom because in 1980, that was when, the soldiers had immediately come to take control of the press. And because of that experience, it was gut instinct. And well, anyways.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think that, in a future Coffee Klatch, we ought to be talking about what Donald Trump and his minions, including his military, are likely to do, and what is the response of responsible citizens in the United States.
I think that's an important topic. Can we have a couple topics on that Coffee Klatch?
Yes, we
we should mix it up.
No, but this is
so
coming
critical.
so soon.
I know. Okay, so I feel like we should wrap things up.
We should wrap things up, but we had a earthquake out here. By the way, we are all fine. And you probably heard about the earthquake. It was a 7.3. It was north of where we are now sitting.
It was 2 days ago, and we all got the tsunami warning.
I thought it was very effective.
Oh, it was incredibly effective. My
multiple alerts.
All of us at work, my kid at school said everyone immediately got it, and it was scary for a while. People were evacuated for us here, it was West Berkeley that was closest, and some colleagues had to rush home. But then the tsunami warning was canceled, retracted. And I didn't feel the earthquake because I was driving at the time. Did you feel it?
No, but we were all texting and making sure that we were all right.
Well, members of my family who are north of here did feel it.
Yeah.
And it was pretty scary, 7.3.
Well,
anyway, we're fine.
I think that, if anything, it makes me grateful for government-funded meteorological and geological services that provide these early warning systems for us.
Completely agree.
Yeah. Well,
rather have a warning we don't need.
Anyway, I'm glad we're all here. Glad we all survived.
Oh, yes.
Same.
And I'm glad for all of you. Thank you for joining us again. We will see you next Saturday. I also want to thank, before we go, I want to thank Jordan Alport, who has been our technical, all-purpose guru. You don't see him, but he's sitting right here over there. And you are just great, Jordan.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you. See you next week.